Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, June the 27th, 2020. It is currently 2:17 p.m. Central Time, and I'm here at Victory Baptist Church. And, well, I was just getting ready to leave the church because, well, I need some food. And I've accomplished a couple of hours of some live broadcasting, but I thought, I've done a lot of things today, but I really need to have my own devotional time. I need to have my own devotional study. And whenever I get ready to have my own devotional study, I want to turn on the microphone and share that with you, invite you to participate. But this one's going to be what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to share with you a thought, something I've been struggling with for probably the last few days, and just kind of hand it to you and see what you think. And you can participate in the discussion by emailing me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. And maybe I'm onto something, maybe I'm not. Basically, if you've been paying attention, you know that one of the things I've emphasizing is that we're looking at the book of Proverbs this summer. We live in a world right now where everything is crazy. There is darkness, there is confusion, there is insanity, and the church seems to be completely broken and messed up. And what the church needs to do is get back to biblical thinking, biblical understanding, biblical wisdom. We need a biblical wisdom. We do not need the wisdom that is earthly, sensual, and devilish. We need the wisdom that comes from above. We need the wisdom of God. And whenever we start thinking about the wisdom of God, the book of Proverbs is the book that we think about and the book we talk about. So I've been emphasizing Proverbs. So I have been reading Proverbs over and over and over and over again. And one of the chapters, because we're still early on, I've been reading Proverbs chapter 1 over and over and over. And there's one verse there that's really bothered me. That's really, 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 really bothered me. And I don't know if it bothers you, but hopefully you will. Maybe I will give you something to think about in regards to it. All right. So let me try to describe the Christian life this way. All right. First, let me give a description of the Christian life, and then I'm going to try to show you that Proverbs doesn't seem to come at certain things from that perspective. All right. The biblical or the Christian view of life is this: you and I are born a sinner. Right? We're born sinners. We have a sinful nature. We're guilty in Adam. We inherit his guilt, and we inherit a sinful nature. Therefore, because we have a sinful nature, our heart is desperately wicked. It is deceitful above all things. The reason we are sinners is not because we sin, but we sin because we are sinners by nature. Our sinful actions flow from our sinful nature. So we can never truly be perfect. We can never truly abstain from all sin because we are corrupted on the inside. And even though that we are saved, that corruption remains, and we fall into sin and we fall into sin and we fall into sin. So the question then, how much freedom do you and I have when it comes to not sinning? What freedom do you have? How much power do you have over not sinning? Now you can say, well, we know, we all agree that our power is limited because we don't believe anyone has the power to not sin forever. In other words, we all believe we are limited in our power so that no one can be perfect and without sin. Only Christ was. So we know there's a limit to that power. But how much power do we have? Now let me ask the question, is it as simple as simply saying, hey, don't do that? And you're like, okay, I won't do that. Is it that simple? We know it's not that simple dealing with your children, right? How many times have you told a child, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this? You can even clearly outline, here is the punishment you will receive for doing said action, and they turn around and do the very action. So it's clearly not that easy, and sometimes they can't even explain to you why they did it. You as an adult, look at all of God's word. Don't do this, make this your priority, love this, don't love this, do this, think this, don't think that. And then you find yourself doing the opposite. Why? Sometimes you can't even articulate why. Well, the biblical answer is because there's something greatly wrong inside of us. There is a sinful nature that keeps us from being perfect, that keeps us from obeying. But Proverbs approaches it in a very different way. Let me give you an example. Here's the verse that I've just been thinking about. Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1. Now, we've looked at verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning or the first fruits of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Verse 8. My son, hear the instruction of thy father. Forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. Now, verse 10. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. And when I read that, I literally put in my notebook, is it that simple? Is it that simple? Hey, if sinners or sin entices you, right? Just consent not. I don't consent. Nope. Not going to do it. Is it that simple? Now, so I did a little work. Let me show you. Let's go to, I can't show you. Let's look at this. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 1. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 1. Let's look at verse 10. Let's look at this and look at the Hebrew word there for consent. All right, the Hebrew word for consent is
Strong's H14, Ava.
It's ava. Now, ava means to be willing, consent, yield, accept. It's translated 54, it's used 54 times. It's translated would, will, willing, consent, rest, content. So do not be willing. Do not give consent. Do not yield. Do not accept. So if sinners entice thee, hey, just don't be willing to do it. Don't give consent. Don't yield to it. My son, if a sinner entices thee, don't consent to it. Don't be willing. Don't yield. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And then it goes on and it builds on this. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Don't do it. If they come to you and say, let us swallow them up alive as the grave and whole as those that go down into the pit. Don't do it. We shall find all precious substance. We shall find our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. My son, walk not in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. Just don't do it. Just don't consent to it. Just don't be willing to do it. Now, how do we understand that kind of mindset in light of a broader biblical understanding that, wait a minute, the reason you would give consent is because of something inside of you? Can you simply, here's the question, can you tell yourself no? Can you just tell your sinful nature no? Not going to sin today. Not going to consent today. Not going to be willing today. Can that do so? Is it a matter of consent? Is it just a matter of consent, just a matter of being willing, just a matter of yielding? Now remember, Paul in the book of Romans says the things I want to do, there's the want to, he doesn't do. And the things I don't want to do, he does them. Well, that seems to imply that there are times when I don't want to do something, but I end up doing it. Why? Is it simply because I consented to it? And it's simply as saying, hey, if you just say no, you won't. Well, then the Apostle Paul couldn't figure that out. It's almost like Proverbs is written from a very just pragmatic perspective. Look, they're going to ask you to do it. Just don't do it. But is that sufficient? Does the book of Proverbs set up a way of thinking that will lead you to despair? Hey, consent not. I keep consenting. I keep doing it. The things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I keep doing. What? Who's going to deliver me? Oh, Christ. Or let me add this. Is it possible that the only way you're not going to consent, the only way you're not going to consent to those who entice you to do evil is you have to possess the fear of the Lord? That you have to have the fear of God. The fear of God. Well, see, even then, even with the fear of God, doesn't mean you're still going to consent at times. You're still going to go along with it. David was a man after God's own heart, and look what he did. The Apostle Paul, did he not love God? So I don't, how do we understand when we read that in Proverbs chapter 1? How do you understand that? Do you just, like if you were taking notes in your own devotional time, would you just say, all right, this week, if I'm enticed by a sinner, by sin, just consent not. And I'm good to go. If they come to me and they offer me all of this stuff, just don't go along with it. Just don't do it. Again, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Verse 15, my son, walk not in the way with them, refrain thy foot from their path. Just don't go along with it. Just don't go along with it. Is it that simple? Now, part of me wants to say, well, if I fear God, then I won't consent. But that seems to imply that there's a secret. Here's the secret. Here's the secret to avoid it. Just fear God and then you won't consent. But no, you can fear God and consent. You can be a man after God's own heart and consent. You can be an apostle and consent. You can be Peter and deny Christ 3 times. So how do we understand it? Do we understand it as saying, hey, here's what you should do. You should not consent. You should not walk with them. Like it's giving us, think of it almost as a moral law. Here's the moral law. Don't consent with sinners who want you to do these horrible things because the things they're asking them to do is a violation, basically, if you look at them, the 10 Commandments and how you treat your neighbor. Don't consent. All right, got it. Don't consent. Man, I keep consenting. I keep consenting over and over and over and over and over to do this. I keep willingly yielding to it. Okay, what's my solution? The solution isn't, try harder. The solution has to be, I need Christ. Now, that doesn't mean I excuse the consenting and I just go out and do some more consenting. No, it just means that I think we have to view this maybe a little differently. When I was a young Christian, I think I probably have notebooks where I studied Proverbs and I just put like consent not. So I would write something in my notes. Okay, last week, how did I consent to these types of thinking and these types of actions? All right, this week I'm not going to consent. And it was put have I done it? If I've done it, let's repent of it. I'm not going to consent. I'm not going to give in. I'm going to stand against it. And then guess what I found? I consented to things. What's the correct way to understand this? Have we mishandled this before? Have we preached this in a wrong way? We preach this almost like, hey guys, just don't do it. And then everybody's like, okay. And then everybody's like, but I keep doing it. Now people may not come back to the pastor and say, you remember you told me not to consent to all of those things? I keep finding myself doing it. Most don't ever come back. They just either convince themselves that they're doing really good but don't we have to struggle with it? So what's your approach? What's your approach to it? Let me know. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Let me read it to you one more time. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Consent thou not. Now, my Bible, let me look here real quick. They have a cross-reference. Yeah, they send me to Ephesians 5:11. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. All right, but again, that doesn't answer my question. If a sinner entice thee, consent thou not. And look at the things they try to get him to do. Come, let us lie wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocents without cause. So they're there to hurt people, hurt the innocent people. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave and whole as they go down into the pit. All right. That's violation of one of the 10 Commandments, right? You're not supposed to kill. You're not supposed to be hurting people, taking their property. We shall find all precious substance. We shall find our houses with spoil, fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. All right. Hey, join with us and let's do these. Let's hurt people and take things. Let's hurt people and take things. Okay. Well, that's not the way we're not supposed to steal. We're not supposed to kill. So is this basically a way of saying follow the law? Well, if it's law, then we know law condemns and we need Christ. I don't think it's just as simple as that we take this and say, hey, consent not, and then everyone's going to be okay. No, consent not, and guess what you're going to do? You're going to find yourself consenting in different ways. Maybe not to those specific actions, but some of those attitudes where you don't love people. Remember, Christ takes these laws and go even deeper with them. Just the external action is not sufficient. Or do we reduce it to an external morality, and then we pat ourselves on the back and say, well, at least I didn't do those things externally. All right, something to think about. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's what I've been thinking about. Probably nobody else is thinking that way, but if you've thought that, let me know, and maybe we can struggle together to try to come up with a better understanding of it. That's the purpose of doing my devotional thoughts like this, is I'm inviting you to participate, so please participate. I do apologize that if in the background you heard all kinds of noise, someone's cutting the grass, maybe of the church. I don't know. They're somewhere close by. So if you heard a riding lawnmower, that's what that was. Also, one last thing. Someone did email me about taking like all of the podcasts that I did on the 21 paradoxes in the New Testament and placing them all together. Please note, I would highly recommend, if you have Spotify, you can create a playlist and put any of my podcast in that playlist. Or if you want to download, I'll spell it for you, PODYSSEY, PODYSSEY. You can follow us and subscribe to all our podcasts using that podcast app. It's free. And you can create playlists. And if you do download PODYSSEY, if you do download that app, make sure you, for all of our episodes, make sure you recommend. You can type a little comment about the episode because that moves us up the charts on that app. But you can create playlists. It's really easy. You find an episode you want, you hit save, and it'll say, where do you want to save it? And you can create a playlist, and you can put all of my, a group of all of my podcasts in one playlist, and you can have it right there. The app shouldn't take up that much space on your mobile device, and you can use that to create playlists, and you can use it to recommend our programs and try to, help us out that way. So PODYSSEY, that's a podcast app, and it's easy for creating playlists. Spotify, you can create playlists as well. Find our podcast, grab the episode, save it to a playlist, and then create the name for the playlist. It's very simple, very straightforward. So someone emailed me about that, so that's something you can do. I will try to create a playlist on one of those apps, and I'll let you know when that is ready. But you can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Any thoughts about Proverbs chapter 1? And, let me know. All right? And spend some time. Proverbs. We need spiritual wisdom. All right? May God bless you as you read and study and meditate on the book of Proverbs. Thanks for listening.